Hello, traveler. Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to handle life's ups and downs better than others? They face conflicts without losing their balance. They respond with calm in the middle of chaos. They somehow manage to understand what others are feeling without absorbing those emotions as if they were their own. And being like this, it is not luck. It is not something you are born with or without. It is emotional intelligence. And here is the good news, the really encouraging part. This ability can be learned. It can be trained. It can be strengthened over time, no matter where you are starting from. Emotional intelligence is precisely this, the capacity to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and also to understand and deal with the emotions of others. It is about navigating the internal landscape of feelings, while simultaneously being aware of the emotional weather patterns of the people around you. And that brings us to today's lesson. I want to guide you through the 5 best steps to develop this intelligence in a practical, realistic, and scientifically grounded way. So let's dive in together. First of all, it is essential to start by recognizing what you are actually feeling. This sounds simple, doesn't it? Almost too obvious to mention, but it is not simple at all. Because the truth is, most people were never taught to identify emotions with clarity. We weren't given an emotional vocabulary as children. We weren't trained to distinguish between similar but distinct feelings, and as a result, many of us go through life reacting automatically, responding to situations without even knowing exactly what we're feeling in that moment. We just react. We just do. And that is the problem. Neuroscience explains something fascinating about this process. When an emotion is identified by us and named correctly, when we put a specific label on what we're experiencing, the brain activates the prefrontal cortex, which is the region connected to reasoning and conscious control. And here is what is remarkable. This activation simultaneously reduces activity in the amygdala, which is the emotional center linked to fear and anger, to those fight or flight responses that can hijack our behavior. In other words, giving a name to what you feel actually helps calm your brain down. It is like turning down the volume on emotional noise. So before you act, before you respond, pause and ask yourself, am I irritated or am I frustrated? These are different things. Is this sadness or is it disappointment? Am I experiencing jealousy? Is this insecurity talking? This exercise in self-perception, this practice of emotional clarity, is training. It is strengthening a muscle you may have never consciously used before. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes to identify patterns in yourself. You start to recognize what knocks you off balance. You begin to see which types of situations trigger intense reactions in you. You understand your emotional landscape better, and that understanding is power. The second step is equally crucial, controlling your reactions. Because between what you feel and what you do about that feeling, there exists a space. And it is in that space where the power of emotional intelligence lives. When we react impulsively, when we shout, when we attack, when we withdraw completely, when we say things we don't actually mean, we do this because we've allowed the emotion to take command. We've handed over the steering wheel. The challenge here is to expand that space between feeling and reacting, to stretch out that moment, to create more room in there, so you can think more clearly, so you can choose rather than simply respond on autopilot. And this is built through practice. It is not something that happens overnight. So before you respond to a provocation, breathe deeply. Take a full breath in, hold it, let it out slowly. Before you send that message you are typing in anger, wait 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Set a timer if you need to. Before you explode, before you let it all out, recognize what you are feeling and ask yourself this critical question. What would be the most intelligent response here? What action would my best self take in this moment? Learn to delay your response. And I want to be clear about something. This is not about repressing emotions. Repression is harmful. Repression causes damage. This is about responding with awareness instead of reacting from impulse. It is about inserting consciousness into the equation. Mastering this pause, this brief but powerful delay, is like having a superpower. You stop being a hostage to the moment. You stop being controlled by your immediate emotional state. Instead, you become the owner of your actions. You become the author of your responses rather than a prisoner of your reactions. The third competency we need to talk about is understanding that emotional intelligence isn't only about you. It is not a solo practice. It also involves comprehending the other person, truly seeing them. Empathy isn't just feeling what another person feels. That is sympathy. Empathy is trying to see the world through their eyes. It is perceiving that someone's behavior might have roots in pain you know nothing about, in beliefs that were formed by experiences you never had, in limitations and struggles that are invisible to you from the outside. But there is an important detail here, something I need you to really hear. You can only be genuinely empathetic with others when you've already learned to be compassionate with yourself. If you are constantly judging yourself harshly, if you are always demanding too much from yourself, if you are perpetually trying to be perfect and beating yourself up when you fall short, then you are going to find it extremely difficult to look at another person with real compassion. Because empathy begins within, doesn't it? When you understand your own limitations, when you accept your own humanity with all its flaws and struggles, that is when you start to recognize that the other person is also trying to do the best they can with the tools they have available. They're working with their own history, their own pain, their own incomplete instruction manual for life. And this is where relationships fundamentally change. Because you stop taking everything personally. You stop interpreting every action through the lens of what does this mean about me? Instead, you begin to see situations from a broader, more generous perspective. You can hold space for someone else's struggle without making it about your own worth. Fourth point, let's be honest about something. You cannot have emotional intelligence if your mind is in a state of collapse. It is impossible. Because stress and anxiety function like mental static, they block our capacity to reason with clarity. When we're under excessive tension, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline, hormones that prepare the organism to react to threat. And while these hormones can save your life in an actual emergency, they severely impair decision-making and emotional balance when they're chronically activated. That is why managing stress isn't a luxury or an indulgence. It is fundamental self-care. It is maintenance work on the very system that allows you to function. Managing stress means learning to slow down, to care for both body and mind, and to give your nervous system the time it needs to reorganize itself, to return to baseline. And this can include surprisingly simple practices, taking conscious breaks throughout the day instead of working without pause, actually resting instead of just collapsing at the end of exhaustion, getting sufficient sleep, and I mean real, quality sleep, not just lying in bed scrolling through your phone, engaging in some form of physical activity that moves energy through your body, practicing meditation or structured relaxation, spending time with people who make you feel good, who fill your tank rather than drain it. These actions reduce stress levels and restore the body's physiological balance. Two things that directly support emotional control. It is that simple truth. When you take care of yourself, when you treat yourself like someone worth caring for, you have more mental energy available to deal with life's challenges. You are not running on empty all the time. You have reserves. You have capacity. Finally, nobody develops emotional intelligence without learning to handle criticism. This is unavoidable. The way you react when you are criticized reveals so much about your level of self-knowledge and emotional security, because criticism can absolutely be constructive when it comes with the intention to help, when it points toward paths of improvement, when it is offered from a place of genuine care. But criticism can also be destructive, which is what happens when it is simply a discharge of someone else's frustrations, when it is an attack masquerading as feedback. The key lies in knowing how to filter criticism, and to do that, you need to ask yourself some essential questions. Does this person have the authority or experience to speak about what they're criticizing? What they said, Does it make sense, even if it's uncomfortable for me to acknowledge? Is there something I can extract from this criticism for my own growth? Is there truth here, even if it's wrapped in harsh words? Emotionally intelligent people, they can extract learning even from negative criticism, even from attacks. They can do this because they don't feel fundamentally threatened by external feedback. They understand that criticism isn't necessarily a reflection of their core identity. Criticism is something that comes from outside. It is a perception from another person, filtered through that person's own lens, their own biases, their own limitations. You see, emotional intelligence is an exercise in humanity. It is not about being calm all the time. It is not about never getting irritated or never feeling hurt. It is about understanding what is happening inside you. It is about choosing more conscious responses. It is about relating to the world from a more balanced place, a more centered foundation. Recognizing your own emotions, controlling your reactions, developing empathy, taking care of stress, learning from criticism, all of this forms a path of self-mastery. It is a process that transforms not only how you feel internally, but also how you connect with people and with life itself. And remember this, nobody is born emotionally intelligent. Nobody comes out of the womb already skilled at this. It is a journey. It is a daily practice of listening to yourself and others. It is about pausing instead of rushing. It is about reflection instead of reaction. It is about gentleness with yourself and with others. The more you practice these skills, the more competent you become, the more natural it feels, the more it becomes simply who you are, rather than something you have to consciously do. Stay safe, traveler. I'll see you on our next journey.